I'm a fan of the Shantae series. They are 2D side-scrollers that have been around since the Game Boy Color era, or right at the tail end of that anyway. But the first game didn't have much commercial success, so it faded away for a bit until it was revived again, several years and console generations later. Since then, it's gained a decent following. It's nice when hard work and perseverance pays off at the end. But this unintentional hiatus also resulted in one Shantae game never seeing the light of day. The series' second game meant for the Game Boy Advance. That's all changed with Shantae Advance Risky Revolution, which is the second game finally completed. Despite being released on several platforms, they still decided to make a Game Boy Advance version of the game as originally intended. There's tons of retro-inspired games, but they break a few rules here and there, if you want to call it that. You know, it's kind of like how some games look like SNES games, but then there's some weird 3D stuff going on that doesn't look quite right, or the music doesn't sound like something a Game Boy could produce, or cutscenes are super high quality while the game is pixel art. You know, it's that sort of stuff. But obviously that's not going to happen here because this is an actual GBA game. Interestingly, if you look at like the trailer of the modern console/PC release of Shantae Advance, it does kind of break those rules there because you can see, for example, high quality character art and stuff like that, but the game is pixel art, and some other Shantae games have been doing that as well in the past. But anyways, no such thing here. This is a GBA game, and that's, yeah, a lot of fun, I think. It's a what-if sort of scenario, but it's, you know, brought to life, and the nice thing is it's not just some sort of game that's, like, inspired by that, you know, time period. It's a game that actually was supposed to come out at that time, so I reckon that's quite authentic. So I bought two Game Boy Advance versions of Risky Revolution, the standard boxed edition and the collector's edition, both from limited run games. The reason being the standard edition has a purple transparent cartridge, which I like better than the gold one that comes with the collector's edition. I know that's slightly financially reckless, but you know, I'll show you those first and then I'll talk about the actual game afterwards, just in case you want to maybe skip, you know, whatever part you want there on the video. Let's look at the regular edition first. It looks like a Game Boy Advance game, though you can tell it's not genuine because of the limited run games logo or writing going up on the left side there. Obviously that should say Game Boy Advance, not to mention it's shinier than the original GBA branding. There's numerous references to Nintendo branding like the seal of quality and also some of the text. It's missing a few things though, like there's no rating or anything like that, so nothing from PEGI or ESRB. Also on the top right, on the back cover, there should be like a little thing about, you know, if it's compatible with link cables or GameCube compatibility or whatever, and that's not there. There's also less warning labels on the edges. The overall spirit of the era is captured though, with faithful looking screenshots and descriptions. The box is also seemingly from the same or similar sort of material, and it's folded together authentically. The design is quite good overall, though I do find the image on the front a bit of a strange choice, or at least from the colors. It almost feels like Shantae should be slightly higher up. There is a bit of dead space right in the middle because it's all kind of dark. Shantae is embossed, which is a nice touch. Actually, if you kind of hold it correctly in the light, the image looks better because then you can actually see the outline of her and then it doesn't look like an empty void in the middle. There's the usual, you know, support piece holding the cartridge in place inside. And there's a manual as well, which is really well done. It looks good and it feels like an original Game Boy manual. I'm glad they put effort into that. It's in full color with various illustrations, game sprites, and even full color backgrounds. The cartridge is purple and transparent, like I said. It feels authentic to hold. Like the plastic feels like, you know, like a Nintendo thing, I guess. The molded on writing makes no mention of Nintendo though. Instead there's LRG branding, which isn't unexpected. You're not going to find an official Nintendo stuff because this is technically not an official Nintendo game. It fits into all of my Game Boy Advance SPs as well as DS Lites without issues. That sounds like that should be a given, but I have an unlicensed 4 games in one cartridge for the original Game Boy that is too big. I remember my dad having to sand down the sides for me so I could play the game as a kid. So yeah, it's not unheard of, but, you know, seems like that shouldn't be an issue these days. Next up is the Collector's Edition. It comes in a very sturdy feeling box that is heavier than you'd expect, mainly because one of the items that's in there, which we'll get to shortly. The box looks almost square, though it's taller than it's wide actually. I like that the cover image is different than that to the standard box. It's a bit empty looking though, and dark. I like when Shantae things are a bit more colorful and cheerful. There's a sleeve over the box. It looks like it's a chrome finish or something like chrome anyways. And then everything is just printed on that. You can see on the black border, there's a few spots of black that chipped off, and that reveals the shininess underneath. Once the sleeve is gone, it's just a generic LRG branded box. Is that normal? I don't really buy much stuff from them, so yeah. I don't know, it's just because it's supposed to be like a collector's item, right? And then having a generic box seems like it goes against the spirit of a collector's item. The top just lifts up and it reveals the content. Basically, there's a bit of a folded up cardboard. I don't know what it is. It's like a cardstock thing in there that holds everything together. The game, a pin, a massive coin, a poster, soundtrack CD, and finally a large acrylic thing. And that is like supposed to hold the cartridge and display it. The game case and everything is the same as the standard edition except for the cartridge being gold. It looks authentic, similar to various Zelda cartridges. But like those Zelda cartridges, they look a bit tacky and plasticky. Like they're obviously not gold, but you know, that's just how they sort of looked. And I like it because it's authentic, but it's kind of ugly. Hence why I wanted the regular purple cartridge. The acrylic cartridge stand is quite heavy and it has magnets to hold the top layer on. The cartridge sits in there quite securely. It looks a bit like a strange trophy. The poster's folded up and you can see the fold marks, which is not really criticism because that's just how these things are. Unless you ship these, rolled up in a tube. It looks a bit like it came out of a magazine though, which is kind of fun. Especially the back because it looks like an ad with all the text on the border and all that. The front has Shantae, Roddy Tops, and Sky in swimsuits. The soundtrack is in a jewel case. The artwork has a brighter background than the game or LE box. I actually think it would have been nicer if they just reversed the image choice there. Have the brighter version of the art on the box with the darker one on the CD, but just saying. There's 55 songs on one disc. Roddy Tops and Risky are also on the inside and back cover. And then Shantae is also on the CD there. And overall, that all looks good in terms of printing and, quality and all that stuff. In terms of sound, I can happily say that the music isn't brick-walled. It's nicely mastered with good dynamics. I have no complaints. The opposite, in fact. I'm quite happy to report that. In case you're wondering what music is on there, it sounds like Game Boy Advance sounding music. I'm generalizing because there are several different genres, but you can tell it's music from a Game Boy game. If you like classic Pokemon music, for example, then I think you'd like this. The songs are relatively short, hence the large number of tracks. The commemorative coin is kind of cool. It's quite heavy and relatively large. It has a matte finish with Shantae on one side and the game's logo on the other. The pin is a strange beast. It's a pixel art Game Boy Advance with a bunch of game sprites around it, and like they spin around the Game Boy Advance. This is more like a backpack sort of pin rather than something you'd put on a shirt or something. It's really heavy. I'm just going to leave it because I don't know. Where am I supposed to put that? It even has 3 pins on the back to ensure that it'll stay in place if you choose to wield it. And yeah, that's the regular and collector's edition of Shantae Advance. Overall, not bad. The highlight has to be the Game Boy cartridges and the relatively faithful packaging. So I'd say most people would probably be cool with just the regular physical edition. But I like the extra stuff you get with the collector's edition. And I do like it overall, despite some complaints here and there. There's nothing wrong with a bit of criticism. Now, onto the game. As I'm writing this, I don't know how I'm going to record the footage. Either it's through a camera pointing at my DS, or maybe I'll just record it, through my Game Boy player. Whatever it is, you're going to see the end result here now. It's not a full-on review detailing every little thing. I haven't played through the game fully, but here's several things I want to bring up. Firstly, it feels like a very traditional platformer to play, which is the story with Shantae in general. I think that's a good thing, though. The story is simple, and it doesn't take that long for you to get going gameplay-wise. Basically, Risky managed to shift tectonic plates around, so that then brings all the different lands to her place so she can rob and pillage them. And it's up to Shantae and her friends to try and put a stop to that nonsense. Gameplay feels very smooth and fluid. I would say it's closest to Risky's Revenge in terms of graphics, sound effects, and how the characters feel to control. I was worried that it would be a bit closer to the original Game Boy Color game, which I thought felt a bit clunky, but I'm happy to report that that isn't the case. The game flow is all very classic. You need to get to a place, explore the level and beat the monsters. You get a new ability, which you need to beat the boss usually. And then that new ability allows you to backtrack and go to places in other levels to either advance the story or get access to secret things. I was going to play it on one of my GBA SPs, but both of the lithium-ion batteries are dead. If it was gasoline powered, it would still work, just saying. So yeah, I need to get a few new of those, and they're all pretty crappy, you know, so they're not as good as the original. And this is why I like when stuff still uses AA batteries, like, you know, the Xbox controllers. Don't have a, you know, cabinet full of bloated batteries trapped inside their plastic sarcophagus. But hey, at least my trusty DS Lite still works, so I use that to play the game. It's fun to play a new game on old hardware again. It's really a different experience to, you know, the new stuff there. Normally with retro style games, you get modern menus and stuff, but with Shantae Advance, you get to appreciate the design choices of having text and menus calibrated to look good and be legible at the same time on a small screen. Controls are pretty straightforward, nothing revolutionary going on there. A is jump, B is attack. Holding R and pressing one of the directions on the D-pad allows you to transform. R and right is the monkey transformation, just as an example. It's all pretty easy to figure out. You learn as you go. I like the humor in Shantae. Character interactions are amusing, and I like the little details here and there. Like, for example, there's a game collector who for some reason is a wolf, and he's looking for an old game that's been unreleased for about 20 years, which obviously references Shantae Advance. And there's also a thing where people in town mention that the store owner disappeared and may have been eaten by a monster or something. And then just a little bit later, Roddy Tops, the resident zombie girl, seems to have mysteriously taken his spot at the store. So yeah, there's funny stuff like that. And then some of the characters say some really ridiculous things too. You know, it's not like ridiculous as in like, oh, they're swearing or something like that. It's, you know, more classic video game dialogue that you would find in the 2000s, where it's a bit more reserved, but then tries to be cheeky with the wording and things like that. And I like that style of humor. There are other platformers that do what Shantae games do, but I like Shantae's cast of characters, the humor, the character interactions, the lighthearted storytelling, traditional gameplay, good music, and smooth controls. It's a good combination, and it's also a little bit fan servicey, just with the character designs. And I also like that it's, you know, like bright colors and things like that. As I'm writing this, the modern console and PC versions of Shantae Advance aren't out yet, but I can see that it's a mix between pixel art and high-res menus and character portraits. But everything else does seem to be the same, like the GBA version, even the music, but I haven't played it yet, so I don't know for certain what all the differences are, just so you know. But yeah, I like the regular edition. The collector's edition is good too, though there's some things that I think they could have done a little bit better. And the game is really fun. And it's cool that it's a Game Boy Advance game that came out in 2025. I hope you found the video interesting or helpful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.